Okay, so before I make my video on the way I choose to weld my rails and how I build my AKs, I wanted to go over some options people have and really what I think the best value in building an AK would be. You can choose to go with a spot welder like this, and they're okay. You know, it's the traditional way, but you got to take into consideration that traditionally the AKs were built in bulk, mass numbers. They were meant to, if one broke, go ahead, throw it, bury it, get rid of it, blow it up with a grenade, and grab another one in the crate over there. They were replaceable. And so building them to last a lifetime wasn't the issue, although the gun design was so simple and great. They do last lifetimes. So spot welding is cheap. They can have anyone do it. You know, they can have a bunch of retards that don't know a thing about welding, and they could be spot welding all day and get it done fast and increase production. For me, when I build something, let's say you built a street rod, would you want to build something traditional, or would you want to improve something with horsepower? So if you're new to building, what I think is important to consider is the overall product of what you're building, the reliability of what you're building, and the value of what you're purchasing as far as tools. If you buy a good tool, you have something that's going to last you a lifetime you can pass down to your great-grandchildren. If you buy junk, you just might get yourself hurt. I don't spot weld my receivers. First of all, I'd have to modify that to get it to fit inside an AK receiver, and I'm not going to do that. That spot welding machine was expensive, and though I seldomly use it, I don't want to destroy it. I use the MIG welder, and what I do is I plug weld. So let's say I drilled some holes and I don't like them. I did them fucked up. I would cut a piece of copper that would fit in there, flush against the steel, clamp it down, and then take the MIG and you just run a puddle till it fills up, you know. And it's a little tricky learning how to MIG weld on 1mm sheet metal if you're used to welding on heavy duty stuff. But if you're learning to weld on thin metal to start with, I think it'd be fairly easy to get the hang of it real quick. MIG welding's simple, it does the work for you, and especially plug welding. I mean, this is the simplest form. It's not like you have to run pretty, like, beautiful beads or anything. You can pick it up right away. My buddy at CVI Tactical, Dustin, was trying to tell me about normalizing his welds. He welds the same way as me, but he has a method he calls normalizing, and I don't quite understand it yet. I want to learn it, because if I can improve what I'm doing, I'm definitely going to do that. And I guess it's a way of taking the heat back down slowly or something like that, filing it down, and it's a way to, I don't know, something complex. I don't get it. I just plug weld them. If there's a little slag pit or something, I'll dig it out and I'll fill that up. I'll take a die grinder with like an emery wheel or a sanding disc and just knock the metal down flush. Maybe sand it, throw it in my glass bead machine. These are the options I have to meet. It's probably better just to slowly file it. If you can't afford all the grinders and stuff, just file it down and sand it away and make it look like the rest of the receiver. You know, it won't be a problem. This is my Hobart, the Handler 135. It's about a $400 big machine, a little one. And it. Okay, so I noticed that I accidentally deleted a video, so I had to go back and re-record something. And I'm going to try and start off where I left off. This machine right here, little Hobart Handler 135, it's about a $400 machine. It's 115 volt. You can plug it in anywhere to almost any outlet. And if you were to buy one of those $125 Harbor Freight specials, it's going to dig deep enough to go ahead and weld your 1mm thick receivers. or that sheet metal, but it's not going to do good enough to weld your jigs and your tools and stuff that you need to use with a press and put 3 tons, 5 tons, 15 tons of pressure on. Those welds will break, your jigs will break, and when things break on presses, they shoot out and it can be very dangerous. So you want to make sure you have stuff good. Little machines aren't bad, and if you buy a high-end one like this Hobart, isn't the most expensive, but it's pretty good. And there's also, I'd recommend Lincoln or Miller for a little machine, and for a good one you're going to spend about $400 to $700 probably, maybe more. You can hunt around and find great deals. Here's my great big machine, the Lincoln, and those are going to set you back. But there are deals to be had out there if you do your research, you know, and you hunt on eBay, Craigslist. I wouldn't go buy anything from Craigslist though without a concealed weapon though. I've heard some really bad stories about Craigslist nowadays. But there's deals to be had out there, you know. People inherit things, don't see their value, and just want to get rid of it. There's estate sales, you know, and you want to do your research and make sure you get the tool that's right for you, but you're not going to short in yourself with something cheap where the little part that breaks inside costs more than the whole machine to fix, you know, and the machines just, they last you 1 or 2 times, and I paid $125, but it worked for 12 months, you know. This little Hobart machine has been running now for, it's probably like 9, 8 years old, I don't know. The Lincoln machine, the big one right here, is really old. There's some other costs involved with MIG machines. You want a good hood. This guy was probably like $100, and you can see through it. And then as soon as you get an arc, it goes dark, so you don't burn your eyes out. Not burning your eyes out is nice. There's argon bottles. The bottles you can rent at, if you go to welding supply stores, they'll rent them to you. It's not something you really have to buy, but you do want to make sure, however you decide to use your MIG, if you want a little one like this and you want to have it on a table, then secure your bottle to a wall, chain it to a wall. Hell, you have a welding machine now, make a stand for it, because if the bottles fall over, they just became rockets. If the little valve at the top was to crack and break, there's a lot of pressure inside those bottles, and they'll take off like a rocket, go through houses, tear shit up, spin in circles, take off like a rocket. Who knows, you know? I don't want to be around when it happens. So if you buy a cart, the carts normally have ways to secure the bottles inside and chain them in there safe. And if you use a bench, be sure you chain it up to a wall safely. You know, even if there's just an earthquake or something fell over into it, knocked it over. You know, that's a really good thing to do, is to be safe with those. If you get a big machine, like I said, this one, 115, it'll plug in anywhere. This big machine is 230 volt. So you need to wire, maybe, it depends on what you have at your shop, but you may need to wire a new breaker. So you got a plug that can handle that load, and then run this machine. Do you know how to do the electrical? There's a lot of books out there that teach you simple house wiring, and it's very simple. And the books, like at Home Depot and stuff, will show you that, are pretty good. There's not a lot to wiring houses and stuff like that. You just want to be safe, make sure things are de-energized, and you follow things, you know, that it says to do in there. Don't cut any corners, you know, if you don't know what the hell's going on. But then when you go into wiring stuff, supplies are pretty fucking expensive. Try not to cuss anymore, but they're pretty expensive. So, I mean, maybe a little machine, you want to check the voltage and make sure you can plug it into like 110, stuff like that. That might be your absolute best option. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. Just do your research. Maybe you know someone who welds, and they can go into a lot more detail and tell you what you need to know and maybe guide you. Price is not always how to get the best value, but when it comes to tools, you really get what you pay for, you know. If you buy a cheap tool, you got to put a lot of pressure in, and that tool breaks, and the next thing you know, you fell down, you might have impaled yourself on something, killed yourself. You buy something with electrical components that's cheap, it might catch on fire, burn your house down, who knows, you know. So just make sure you're safe in your decision, and being frugal doesn't kill you or hurt you, or end up costing you more money in the long run. I think I about covered everything that I wanted to cover in this little redo. Okay, the value of buying these things and how they pay themselves off. Do you live in a state where having a threaded barrel is illegal? Remember all those 5/64, 16th inch drill bits that you broke? Start holding on to them, because they're made of tool steel. Anything you pin on a barrel, the pins have to be made of tool steel. That's BATF law, but those work fine, and it's legal to do. And you might have a jar full of them someday. You lose a pin, there you go. But what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and screw your slant brake or whatever it is you have on, and you'll drill just so you take material off the barrel, but you're not puncturing the barrel, damaging the chrome lining, or weakening the wall a whole bunch. I mean, you just barely want to kind of cover this surface, but you want to get some meat out too. So when you can take one of those bits, break it off in there with the nice smooth side, break your drill bit cut side, break that off, have the nice round side in there, through your slant brake or brake, whatever your device is you want to pin on, and go ahead and grind down those edges smooth, and maybe break one side off and drive it through a little bit, so you got a little bit of metal you can grip and get a good bite, and then you'll go ahead and tack weld that thing in. Now, when you build AKs, it's kind of like a pet cemetery. You got to bury your own dead. Well, with an AK, you have to do all the work yourself. If this tool, if your rifle ever has a problem, you got to fix it. You can't take it to a gunsmith. They cannot work on something that was built by someone like you, unless you're an FFL and you can legally manufacture and you have the endorsements from the ATF, BATF to manufacture. Okay, so everything has to be done yourself. I'm not sure about the slant brake thing, but that's not a problem I've had. But I will tell you, if you go to a welder, I think their rates are normally about $60 an hour. Machine shop can be $75 an hour, $125 an hour. So how many little breaks are you going to have them weld onto you so you're compliant with your state's law before the $400 machine is paid for itself? Now I'll pull some tooling up. Okay, so here's some of the tools I made myself, and just this tooling alone that you will need for building AKs, I think have helped. Like if you were to go out and purchase a machine like this, a good cheap one, like I said, $400, probably that range, but it's going to pay for itself. If you go to AK Builder, they have a jig for drilling, I believe it's just your front training holes, and I believe it's about $80. And if you wanted to do 7.62 and 5.45, you got to throw in an extra whatever for the second head to do the other caliber, and I think it comes out to around 120. This guy I made here does both caliber sizes, and it does rear trainings. And what you do, you screw the rear training in right here, and I have some slats cut. So you have the rear training on. You're going to line up the drill bit to go through the hole perfectly. Everything's level on your drill press. You line it up. Oh, yeah, it goes down, doesn't hit nothing. You're going to slide that receiver on that rear training and then put this drill press straight down through the holes. It's very simple. Same thing up here, except for here's a rubber expansion nut. You can tighten it, and it'll expand the size of that training. Hold it firm. You can see here, normally I put grease behind this surface back here, and it spins a lot freer. I don't have any fresh grease back there right now. If I were using it, I would have. But anyways, that little expansion nut, you can get it just about any hardware store in the random nut and bolt bin. That'll expand to either size of either training. I think this thing, the biggest cost for these handles, I had some scrap iron laying around. I think altogether I spent about $4 making this thing. Took a chop saw. It took welding a couple nuts on the back. I guess I could have threaded and tapped them, but it was faster, easier to do that, and it works well. I already made a video that shows my my trigger jig for the trigger guard for riveting. This was very simple to make. I made it out of some steel I had laying around, and I'm able to rivet down beautiful, perfect rivets with this thing. That, you know, go on AK Builder and look at the price. I don't even pay attention to it anymore. I don't remember what it was. I just remember after buying my riveting jig for riveting the receiver and stuff, go and no-go gauges, and the barrel population kit, and the hell else was a must-add? The bending jig. Those things I recommend you buy. I just think they're a great value too. Let's say you live in a small space and you can't have a great big press, or you want to save a few $100 on buying one. I think they're anywhere from $100 to $300 Harbor Freight. I don't know, but you don't need some high-end one. The cheap ones, Harbor Freight, will work. You can get steel for anything you make at recycle centers that take scrap iron, and normally they'll sell the steel scrap laying around for the recycled value of whatever they paid someone for it. So you can get a lot of good steel to use for cheap. If you were to make a press, this is kind of important up here. This is a strong back, and it makes this plate as strong as a piece of an I-beam or something. This wasn't for bending jigs, but I can make a video to show you it could, I'm sure. I may have to loosen these nuts and run them up as high as they can go. I don't think I have much room to spare to do it, but I mean, you could build something and do it yourself. I know Toth Tool, they have a real simple thing for populating barrels that Arms of America sells, and it's just basically a couple pieces of all thread like this instead of doing it on a press. So I'm sure you could rig something up like this if you had a machine, and you can definitely press receivers in it. This is grade 8 steel, super strong stuff. You're not really supposed to weld it to normal steel, but once you get a feel for welding, you'll be able to feel your penetration, know you dug in good, and you'll have a feel for things. Like, I know I shouldn't put tons and tons of pressure on here. This 5-ton jack and the things I need it for when I made it, I wasn't gonna put enough pressure to crack those welds or nothing. Let's see, I might have said that I recommend sleeving these with some kind of piece of tubing if you're going to use it to do receivers, and maybe have another plate of steel to go between the bottom piece of your jig and then, you know, up here for bending. So, and then you just save space, money, all kinds of things making your own tools. I have a jig, I can't find it right now. I made it for like the Polish 80% blanks, and it was for drilling the 2 access holes. There's some money saved right there. If there's any tooling that you want to know how to make, maybe I can help you or give you some dimensions, or go into a little detail about some of the stuff I've made. Saves you big, and it kind of feels a lot more rewarding. It makes you feel a little bit more like you built your own instead of just buying everything you can to simply put it together. Props to AK Builder for making some of the tools and jigs and stuff they have. That flat bender is just a total game changer. They have some excellent tools, but man, you can just keep buying more and more and more, and it really adds up. But I really want to just stress the value of a good MIG machine, and how much you'll end up saving me